Talking with the experts.
This is episode 278 with Tony Dimitriadis, and we're going to be discussing 5 secrets to a financially rewarding, tax-efficient lifestyle business.
Because there's a big difference between providing a service or a product and running a business. And, they're business owners at the end of the day. They're not just salespeople for a particular type of service. So really understanding that business aspect. The other thing is not really having the right systems in place to properly manage your money and manage your business overall. I think, as we know, cash flow is probably one of the biggest killers in business, and probably always will be. So obviously managing that is important. So they're probably, the key problems that, these 5 steps will hopefully resolve for ambitious business owners.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners, and you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today it is my very great pleasure to introduce you to Tony Dimitriadis. Now, Tony is a certified practicing accountant and has successfully run his own firm, Ad Partners, for over 20 years, and he is the author of Build It and the Money Will Come, was released in 2017. Business owners have normally been educated and have gained experience in providing a product or service, and unfortunately what they haven't been given are the resources and training to financially manage their business. And today we're going to be talking about the 5 secrets to a financially rewarding, tax-efficient lifestyle business. Welcome, Tony, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Rose. Thank you for having me on your fantastic podcast, and hopefully the viewers and listeners will get some value out of this.
I'm sure they will. So I know you've been in business for a long time. So how did you come to be writing your book to help business owners?
Well, it stemmed from a program I did going back 5 or 6 years ago now, that was run by an organisation that was assisting entrepreneurs in their own business journey. And I just thought our business needed a little bit of a refresh. So we had a critical look at, what we were doing, how we were delivering it, who we were delivering it to, etc. And so, we just felt that, it was time to focus a little bit more and really deliver value. So as a result of that, part of that process was potentially to publish. Of course, not everyone does that necessarily, and that's fine. But it was something that I was really passionate about, Rose, because traditionally us accountants and a lot of professional services providers think of their IP as being something that they've got to hold close to their chest, which is absolutely ridiculous, pardon me saying.
It is. I agree.
And we should be, educating and supporting and assisting business owners out there, and not pretend like, we know something incredibly special and we can't let it out there, So hence I wrote the book, The 5 Secrets to Building a Financially Rewarding, Tax-Efficient Lifestyle Business. And it's written for ambitious business owners. So business owners that really do want to grow their business and do want to benefit. And it doesn't really matter, what size you are currently. It's really about, wanting to grow and to better yourself in your business and to maximise the return at the end of the day. Now, that's not to say that everyone's in it for the money, but clearly, the financial benefit is important because that then gives you what you really want, which is the lifestyle. Money itself, doesn't really do much. It's what it can give you, and it's a lifestyle that I'm pretty sure most business owners are out there looking for.
We're all striving as business owners to gain their ultimate lifestyle, really, aren't we?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that's our aim. We want to provide for ourselves and for our families. So with your 5-step process, people will end up with a plan at the end for the future, and it's usually a structured process, and helps business owners become financially savvy. Would you like to walk us through the 5 steps?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. So the steps, or the 5 steps are essentially: step 1, strategy. So that's actually understanding what it is you want to achieve in business. And I'll go into a bit more detail. Step 2 is structure. So making sure that you're set up in the most efficient way possible. Step 3 is statutory. So that's all about the compliance side of your business. Step 4 is systems. And when we say systems, we don't just mean computer systems, but the way you run your business and manage your business. And step 5 being support, and building the right support team around you. So there's a common theme there. They all start with S, Rose. So
I noticed that. It's easy to remember.
Absolutely. So they're the 5 steps essentially, and as you say, they're really about resolving, a couple of the key, issues and problems in business. And one is the lack of financial intel, because business owners, as you touched on earlier, they're very good at delivering the product or service that they, provide in their business, but very few have been given the financial toolkit or handbook to really go about running a business, because there's a big difference between providing a service or a product and running a business. And they're business owners at the end of the day. They're not just salespeople for a particular type of service. So really understanding that business aspect. The other thing is not really having the right systems in place to properly manage your money and manage your business overall. I think, as we know, cash flow is probably one of the biggest killers in business, and probably always will be. So obviously managing that is important. So they're probably the key problems that these 5 steps will hopefully resolve for ambitious business owners.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, that they all start with S, but this is stuff that you learn in management. When you go to TAFE or uni or whatever, and you're going to go and get your degree, these are the 5 steps that you learn in managing a business. And it's interesting to note that your process follows those management skills. And strategy is always important as a business owner. You need to have that strategy in place. So how do you define the strategy that business owners should use?
Yep. So there's 3 parts to the strategy piece. One is understanding where you're going. Secondly, understanding where you are now. And then thirdly, how you're going to get from where you are now to where you're going. So, for us, it's about, and some of these things might seem a bit high level, but, defining what your mission is in your business, what vision you have, what values you have as a business owner and operator, and then starting to set some goals, some 1 to 3 to 5 year goals, to actually understand what it is you want to achieve. Where you are now is really about understanding your numbers, Rose. So, I know not too many business owners are excited about, analysing financial reports and managing cash flow and those sorts of things. It's funny that I find that many business owners really only focus on one number, and that's their bank balance. And what I say to my clients and anyone else that I'm chatting with who's in business is that is the last number you should be checking, not the first. Because if you've got everything else in order, your business bank balance will be quite healthy. So analysing, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, preparing cash flow statements, actually understanding your numbers and where you're at now is critical. And then the third part, as we said, that the how to get there is then really understanding some business benchmarks and some basics that are particular to your industry. And that doesn't mean you have to be the same as everyone else, but understanding the benchmarks, then you can pitch yourself, or understand exactly where you are on those benchmarks, and then, pitch yourself to wherever level you want to get to. Key performance indicators or KPIs. People would have heard that term. Some might think they loosely have some, but really digging deep into those things, you'll be amazed at what you find, how good or bad you're doing in certain areas. And it's not until you actually understand that, can you then improve it? So having those key performance indicators, measuring them, and then taking action. Because operating on gut feel, you might get lucky with a couple of things, but that's not really the way to run a business. So that's really in general the whole strategy piece. So really, understanding where you want to be, understanding where you are now, and then starting to put those KPIs, those action plans in place and measuring them, so you can get better. Because if you're not measuring, you just, as I say, you're just sort of running along day to day and probably doing a bit of guessing.
And you're not seeing where your business is either falling down or needs improvement, or where it's actually doing really well. Now, the structure and statutory obligations, I understand those, and I think most business owners would understand those as well. But what would be the systems that you would advise that business owners put in place?
Okay, well, systems, there's probably a couple of main areas. The first and probably most important is cash flow. The second is working capital, and that's going to differ across different industries. The third is finance and how that plays a part in business. And the fourth one is some troubleshooting. So with regards to cash flow, Rose, one of the key things to understand is the difference between cash and profit. You can actually be making a profit in business, but still fall over because you're not managing the cash component well. So understanding money in versus money out and tracking that and planning for it is critical. Then there's a couple of key elements in business that you need to be on top of. And probably one of the biggest things that many business owners aren't on top of, and that is their commitments to the ATO. And the ATO is one organisation you probably don't want to get on the wrong side of. Because having a little bit of a black mark against your name with the ATO just means that there's, more eyes on you and, potentially more problems. The other thing is overcommitment. I see a lot of business owners overcommitting with their expenses, and, money starts to come in, and some, not all, but some thinks that every dollar that comes in is theirs. Unfortunately, that's not the way business works. You've got many suppliers you've got to pay, you've got staff you've got to pay, you've got, utilities you've got to pay, and of course, our dear friends at the ATO. So it's not until all of those, you're on top of all those commitments that, what's left is essentially yours as a business owner. And then, doing the cash flow forecasting, as I said, I know it's simple, but you'd be amazed at how many business owners don't actually sit down and forecast their cash, to actually understand what their fixed commitments are, because that's pretty easy. But I've sat down with many business owners, Rose, and we've gone through this process, and you'd be amazed at how many said, "Oh, I didn't realise I was paying so much for that. And, oh, I didn't realise I had all these subscriptions. And, oh, I didn't realise that, my phone bill was X, or my, insurances were, were Y." So, you think but until you actually sit down and have a really good hard look at it, sometimes they can get away from you. The other thing is some of these things, as we know, insurances and the like, they will just go up every year, and you just continue to pay them because they continue to be direct debited out of your account. But, you should be reviewing those things on at least an annual basis, because there are many options out there. So you could be saving, even if you're saving 5 or 10%, 5 or 10% across many of these expense items can make a huge difference on the bottom line. The other thing that I spoke about from a system point of view is working capital. So, understanding how you're managing your payments to your suppliers, understanding how you're managing receipts from your customers, because if you're an account, we want to make sure that we're getting money in on a timely basis, and the work in progress aspect as well. So, if you're providing services that can go over a longer period of time, you could be, providing these services and carrying the cost of that and not being paid toward the end. So trying to structure payments on a more regular basis, can make a big difference to your cash flow as well.
Yeah, I agree with that one totally. I mean, we had a business in Queensland for 10 years, and we just used to pay, as stock was brought in or whatever. And then sort of at the end of the week, there was no money for us to eat anything because, we have to eat out of the shop because, we hadn't planned for these things to come up, or the insurance came in and hadn't realised, we thought we had this money in the bank, and then all of a sudden the insurance came out, and thought, oh, well, why was that? Because we didn't have it planned out on a calendar or a spreadsheet or whatever it is that you do to say that payment was going to come out at that time. And yes, so sometimes we got a bit surprised. And
and many business owners do. And again, with things like that, and insurance is a good example, because nowadays, a lot of business insurances are in the thousands, they're no longer in the hundreds. It can be a big hit. So even doing something like, spreading those insurance premiums, on a monthly basis can really help your cash flow. So you don't get these surprises, and they're generally not good ones, that just, come out of your bank account. So, again, it's not just so much understanding how much you're paying for these things, but the timing of them is important as well. And you can manage the timing of a lot of these things. And I suppose that's my message. My message is you being in control of it rather than letting someone else control it. Because if you're letting someone else control it, it's going to be potentially a bit of a problem for you in your business.
Yeah, I know. With my current business, I actually I did an audit on all my subscriptions and things that I'm paying for, and I was very surprised how much it added up to every fortnight. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is a lot of money. I mean, most of them I can't do without, but some of them are not have tos, but nice to haves. And but I don't use them as often as I could do, and so therefore I'm really paying for something on a monthly basis or fortnightly basis that I really don't need. And so I needed to cull them because it was just a wasted expense.
Yeah, and that's the point, it's not until you sit down and do that exercise that you really understand what you're paying for. And a lot of these things, sound great at the time when you sign up. And you might use it quite heavily for the first few months, for example. 3 years down the track, you probably haven't looked at it much. And then, you say to yourself, oh, hang on, why am I paying $50, $100 a month for something that I'm not really getting the value from? It might have been good back then, but it might not be good now.
Absolutely.
So understanding those things, and it's, we all understand there's a cost to running a business, and there are certain things that, are have tos in business, and there's certain things that can provide value and benefit. But actually understanding and getting the value from those and using them, if you are paying for them, is critical. And if you're not using them because you don't really think that is something that's of great value to your business, then stop paying for it.
And there's
Cancel
always
your
the free version. I mean, if you want to upgrade your thing when you start to, start to use it again, then just upgrade your subscription. But use the free version as much as you can. That's what I think, anyway.
Oh, absolutely. And there's always other options too. So understanding what your options are, in whatever area it is that that you've got this subscription is important as well, because you might get the same thing somewhere else cheaper,
Absolutely.
or
You
free,
don't have
as you
to
say.
use known brands. It's like a bit like when you do grocery shopping. Home brand usually is just as good as a known brand, and why not use it just because it doesn't look nice? When you bring it out in front of your visitors, it's in your pantry. Who cares?
Yeah, and that's right. And sometimes, there is a perception that we have to use the best of everything or have the best of everything. But a lot of these things, don't always add, great value to your business. We all want nice things. I want nice things. You want nice things. I'm sure all your listeners and viewers out there want nice things. But make sure they're things, one, you can afford, and two, that do give you value. That there is a benefit that you can see from it.
It's always got to be a benefit, really. There's not much point having something that is lacking in benefit. It doesn't matter whether it's in business or in life. Make sure that there is some benefit at the end of the day. Otherwise, it's pointless having it.
Absolutely. And so the other part of the systems is, as I touched on earlier, is financing, and that's playing probably a bigger part in business nowadays, because there are a lot of people out there that are either looking to grow and expand and need funds to do that, or there are some that might have found it tough, in certain periods of time, and so are going to need to pull on some finance. So understanding, what your options are there is important. There's essentially 4 places you can access funds from. One is debt, so going to a financial institution and asking for money. 2 is equity, through funds that you have. 3 is a partner/investor in your business, and 4 is from your profits that you generate. Understanding what is going to be suitable to you. They're not all going to be great options for you at any one given point in time. So picking the best option for you, understanding the advantages and disadvantages. Again, there's cost associated with each of those things. So understanding what that cost is and what the implications are to you is important. But we shouldn't be afraid of finance, because in a lot of cases without it, it can stunt your growth, and you might have a business that does really have the potential, but you're sort of saying, "Oh, I don't want to go get money, or I don't want to get a loan, or I don't want to introduce a partner or investor, etc." And so you sort of say, "Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to do that." But then you could be costing yourself a fair bit of money potentially. So, finance does play a big part as well in business, and managing that finance aspect is important as well.
Sometimes getting that loan or that investor, can bridge the gap between having and not having. And, as you quite rightly pointed out, that it could progress your business by biting the bullet and, doing either of those things. So,
yeah. Well, if you do have a good business, in terms of the product or service that you supply, it's not easy to grow to a level, well, not quickly anyway. You could grow organically, but if you think you have an opportunity, whether it's opening up a second store and a second office, or or a different location, interstate, regionally, etc. And you can potentially double your turnover. Well, the cost of finance might not be that great, or the cost of introducing a business partner might not be that great, because the overall value that you increase your business by, is exponential. And that's sometimes the things that people forget. They're sort of concerned about what ends up in their bank account each week, and they're not looking at business from a value proposition.
Or a broader perspective, really, are they? Down the track in a year or two.
Yeah. Now that doesn't mean that everyone's going to have a business that's going to have a, huge goodwill at the end of it. But those type of businesses that can, well, you'd be, silly as a business owner not to be, thinking about that and sort of looking ahead in 5 years' time or 10 years' time when you say it's time to sell up. You want to get something for all of that hard work, all those years of effort and time and blood, sweat and tears, as they say.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tony, have you got any other books on the horizon, or?
Listen, I was considering the book that I wrote, Build It and Money Will Come, was written for builders and property developers, but the 5 key messages there, the 5 key secrets that we talk about, are actually across all business types and all industries. There's a few other addendums to that particular book that's pertinent to building, some GST, some property development type stuff. But yeah, I've been thinking about potentially trying to get a second one out there, but haven't quite got there yet, Rose, but I potentially will. I just wanted to touch on just quickly that 5th element is support. That's probably one of the biggest elements. We all understand that we need staff potentially and workers within our business, but we also need to engage the right, professionals to support us in our business, and those that that are experts that understand it, and those that understand the industry you're in. Because the one thing that the biggest mistake, Rose, if I can sum it up like this, that business owners make is that they try and do everything themselves. That is the single biggest mistake business owners make. Because they don't value their own time. They just say, oh, that's all right, I'll do it. No one can do it better than me. I'm the business owner, yeah. Well, I know there are some business owners that are working 16, 18 hours a day. Now, that is no way to live a life. And quite frankly, it's not sustainable anyway. So if you sit down and actually value your time in terms of what you can achieve in your business for every hour you work on the business and the growth of the business, the cost to engage others to do all of that other stuff, the administration, the financial aspect, etc., is a lot less than the value you provide to your own business. So why are you doing those low value, low payoff activities when you could be doing the high payoff activities and really benefiting yourself and your business? And I think, if there's one message, that's probably the one I want to get out there to business owners. Understand your value and your worth and where your time is best spent, and delegate everything else. Focus on the ability and the service that you provide and provide well to grow your business, and everything else comes off your desk, comes out of your inbox, goes to others that one, better qualified for those specific tasks, and 2, are a lower cost than the value you can provide to your own business.
Absolutely, yes. That's why I told my husband years ago about lawn mowing. I said, why don't we just get someone in to mow the lawns? And he said, well, that costs money. I says, but how much money do you earn an hour? And he told me, and I said, well, then a lawn mowing person would cost less than what you earning an hour. But he said, but I do it for free. I said, but you're not really doing it for free because you're giving up your time.
Yep. And it's the
But he still
opportunity cost.
he still couldn't equate paying someone for versus him doing the lawns and, the value in it. And I could never get him to understand.
It's because people don't value their time, Rose.
No.
They like your husband said, I do it for free. Well, yeah, I understand you don't invoice yourself, but an hour of your time is worth X, $100, $200, whatever it might be. The lawnmower guy's going to charge you $25, $30, $40.
Hour of your time could be spent doing something else.
Absolutely, and it might not necessarily be, spending more time working on the business. It might just be spending more time with your family and your friends, because that's important too. Having that lifestyle business means having a lifestyle and a lifestyle you enjoy. So, if you've got your business sorted out and humming along well and the right support team in place, and you focusing on the value and the growth strategies and delivering the service that you're so good at, let everyone else do all of the other bits. And one, you'll be spending less time on your business, and two, making more money. So it's quite simple.
No-brainer, really, isn't it?
That's it. It is a no-brainer. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy, because business is not easy, but it's easier than what you're doing now, potentially. Now you're probably burning yourself out, running yourself in the ground, trying to do a million things at once, juggling things, and that's when mistakes can happen, Rose. That's when things can get missed or left off or not done well, because you are trying to do a million things at once.
I totally agree with that. Now, Tony, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you or want to work with you?
Well, they can certainly look us up online. We're at www.adpartners.com.au. We're accountants and business advisors, and they can email me directly if they wish at tonyd@adpartners.com.au. Or they can simply call the office at 039 349 3499.
Perfect. Any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us today, Tony?
I think I've covered the main ones, Rose, but I think it's important for business owners to take a step back, have a look at their business in terms of where they are now. Are they achieving the goals they want to be achieving? If not, start to put in some of these strategies that we've spoken about today, and it will make an incredible difference. Actually understanding your financial situation, understanding, what your day is made up of in terms of all of the tasks that you're doing, what can you delegate to others right now, start to free up your own time, start to work on the high-paying activities, and I think it will make an immediate difference to their business.
Oh, not only to the business, I think to their well-being as well.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really enjoyed listening to your strategies for building a business and having a better lifestyle.
Thanks for having me, Rose. I really do appreciate it, and I hope your viewers and listeners get some value from it.
Oh, they certainly would. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Talking with the experts.